Hi, this is Dwayne McIntyre. I'm the chairman of the Russell County Republican Party, and this is Campaign Corner. Today we have with us a wonderful guest, United States Congressman Moran Griffith. Moran Griffith, welcome to our program.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for being on. You know, what we're doing here with the Campaign Corner is just a social media integration. It's a way to engage, our Facebook page and our constituents here in our county and stuff, and get them to meet a more personal level of our elected officials, people run for campaigns and stuff.
Right.
So, and you're both this year.
Yeah,
you are a candidate and elected official.
Yes,
So.
sir.
Yeah, so it's great to have you here. One of the things that I'm curious about is we met back in 2012 and we were having a discussion about farming and some farming issues, and you had mentioned talking about developing a market or having an idea about a market down here, similar to that in my home state, Pennsylvania, in New Holland, where big auction market, and it sells to cities and stuff like that at a higher price on some stuff that we normally don't have a market for down here. And then just recently you got caught visiting that market. Now that's my backyard, so you were actually in my hometown.
Yeah.
So there was probably people who knew me in that room with you. So and I think one of the things I found interesting about that was it was over 2 years ago. You mentioned it. And and it would be easy to just assume that he wasn't, he was just saying something. But here, actually, you're really below the radar working on these things. So you mind telling us about it?
Yeah, I don't mind at all, because what I'm looking to do is to get ideas. This is not an area of expertise, and here's the idea. As I travel around the 9th District, early on I noticed that out of the 22 counties, now there's 7 cities, take the cities out for this discussion, out of the 22 counties, I know that there is sheep production or goat production in 21 of the 22 counties. I suspect it's in the 22nd county as well, I just haven't stumbled across it yet. To me, that says that there's an opportunity there to grow something in the economy that we already have people who have an idea what they're doing. But we have to try to figure out a way to make our market bigger and to make our market more profitable. And so I've been looking for all kinds of ideas, and a lot of my ideas have not panned out. One of the concepts was, could we have a labeling, Appalachian lamb, Appalachian goat. I thought that might be something we could do. The problem is a lot of our lambs are being sold in New Holland, and I was told by farmers here that that's where most of the lambs were going. So I thought, well, if you're going to find out what's going on, you need to go see what's happening in New Holland. So I took a trip some time ago now up to New Holland and got one of their folks to tell me what was going on and what the market was like. And I was sitting in the sale as they were bringing in the lambs, and the guy started pointing out, now that guy buys for the Senegalese and this fellow buys for the folks from this minority group. And what they're doing is they're taking these lambs to New Jersey, New York, in that huge metropolitan area, and they're selling them a specialized sized lamb to a specialized market. They know what size lamb each of the different ethnic groups, North Africa, Middle Eastern groups, what they want, and that's where a lot of our lambs are going. The problem is they don't care about where it came from.
Yeah.
What they care about is size. So, whether it's Southwest Virginia lamb or whether it's a Colorado lamb, if it's the right size, they don't care. They just want the live animal of a particular size, and each group has a slightly different need, so that makes that one tough. But I wanted to make sure that we were, that I'm learning on the ground how these things go, and I still need to go south and check the southern market out. It's not as big for us. Most of our lambs are going north, but it's something I want to check out. I also, in that case, you're right. I got found out because we were leaving. I wasn't wearing my suit and tie. I was just there in khakis and a shirt. And as we were leaving, I hear this voice, "Hey, is that my congressman?"
Oh no!
And a farmer from Withville,
Great.
who had taken some lambs up there. He takes lambs up and brings pigs back. Recognized me, and we had a conversation there in the parking lot.
Oh.
But it's a fun story because it shows that, in fact, our lambs are going there. But I'm also working on some other concepts, and I don't know that this will bear fruit. But I discovered in talking with the First Minister, because Wales is a part of Great Britain, he's not the Prime Minister, but he is the First Minister in Wales, and he says that they have to import lamb into Wales, and it's a small country, but it is a large lamb consuming population. They import it from New Zealand.
Wow.
And so what I'm trying to do is study the market, because clearly when they have to import in the wintertime, in the spring and summer they produce enough of their own, but in the wintertime they're importing it from New Zealand. Clearly you can ship the animals from Southwest Virginia to Wales cheaper than you ought to be able to ship from New Zealand.
Wow.
Now what New Zealand's doing on the tax side, what they're doing to underwrite the cost of that shipment, I don't know. We're going to find that out. But I'm looking for ideas in places that we can market our lamb, because I'm convinced with the mountains and the rolling hills and the pasture lands that we have, I think we could increase production. I also want to try to find ideas to get more dollar from each animal. So far, I haven't stumbled across the magic formula, but I'm asking farmers to let me know. And in fact, recently I was in Tazewell County and accidentally bumped into a sheep farmer, and I said, hey, you know, if you think of something, if you wake up in the night and you think of something, please let my office know, because we'll do whatever we can, because this is an area where I think we can do a better job of marketing our product and getting more money out of it. And you know, maybe one of these things where to most of the public, when we finally hit, and I'm convinced one day we'll figure out the right formula, everybody will go, wow, that's great. It will have taken years of effort and lots of ideas from different people.
Yeah, well, I tell you, as a farmer, you know, I moved here from Pennsylvania. One thing Pennsylvania has and New Holland has is the Amish have a branding.
Right.
And it's just blanket famous across the nation. You know, if it's got an Amish attached to it, it's got to be good. You know, so and so they have a very specific branding. And down here, when I moved down here, you know, we have this wonderful farming community, very wonderful agricultural community. You go to our farmers markets, and you see a lot of hardworking folks who are just doing that raw, you know, agricultural lifestyle, and what I see here is it's just booming. Like this past year, and my numbers, I mean, this is just a guesstimate. I think we've talked about this at our market. You know, there was previous years we were talking, you know, 2,000 people come through our market a day, and then it was like 5,000 people come to our market a day. And this year there was a few days where we are all willing to bet that almost 10,000 people came through that market in one day. And I mean, just so packed, like there was a point where I just stood back and just realized the whole market was wall-to-wall shoulder, just people, they're buying. And so, you know, this kind of movement is growing, and I think that what I think we're on a cusp of is that Appalachian branding that you're thinking that we need, and I agree. I think that's exactly what we need, and then you know, we're going to explode into a larger regional setting. So I think that's it. And then you mentioned New Zealand, and as a farmer, I'll let you know, when you were out on the farm, you saw a lot of our Red Devon cattle. Right. Well, some of the prime genetics in our group actually came from New Zealand. And if you research into New Zealand, what's going on down there is it's a cut above the rest of the world in agricultural setting. And what happened, I guess, I'm not sure, a decade or two ago, it's such a isolated island, or you know, that they were doing all this industrial farming, they kind of depleted the whole entire island. I mean, they were having anything trying to produce food. I mean, nothing was working. And so they just innovated, you know, more nature-oriented farming tactics, and now they are the hub of the whole world right now in agriculture. Yeah. All their models, all their industry models and stuff.
Well, it's interesting you mention that, because I went on a trip one time on my own dime out to Utah, and while I was there, and this is the part I did on my own, I went and toured a facility up in the mountains that is run by the Church of Latter-day Saints, and they have gone to a naturalistic approach. And what they do with their cattle, they make their cattle behave like buffalo. So they enclose them in a small area. That makes the cattle eat all the grasses, even the ones they don't like. And then they move them regularly from one small area to another. Once they've eaten everything on that spot, they move them to another spot. They don't use chemicals. They don't shoot the coyotes. They don't kill the prairie dogs. Because what they found is that when cattle are in a small area, they figure out where the holes are. The reason they step in the prairie dog hole is because they're going to get the sweet grass, and they're not paying attention. They're walking through all this other grass. When they're eating everything that's there, they see the hole and they just step aside from the hole. And what they found is that their production is far better. And it was really interesting because on the other side you had the Bureau of Land Management land on the other side of the road, and it was really barren looking. Lots of big weeds, sagebrush, things that the animals don't want to eat when it's big, but they'll eat it when it's little.
Yep.
And on their side of the road where they were doing this, it was a paradise. It was very interesting to me to note that, because it's a way that I think we ought to encourage the Bureau of Land Management to go. Now, that being said, I pointed it out to some members of the Agriculture Committee. I don't serve on that committee. They haven't chosen to go in that direction. But it does show that there are things that you can do that you can increase profit.
No, absolutely.
Increase the number of animals you can actually graze by going to a naturalistic approach. In this case, it was the cattle, and having them behave as the natural grazer for that area would have, the buffalo, even though the buffalo are predominantly gone from that particular area.
What that is called is actually, it's called mob grazing. And we actually implement models like that on our farm, and a lot of the farmers in Southwest Virginia try to mimic that, because in here we got all this limestone, we got all these hills and stuff, and so we just don't have a natural resourceful soil. So but when you mob graze, that's exactly it. It puts organic matter in the soil. It makes it more nutritional and puts a lot of minerals back in the soil. And then what happens is, we got also a lot of thistles and a lot of these burdock and a lot of cockleburs and stuff. And when you mob graze them, it just eliminates, like you're saying, like those cockleburs even. They'll eat them right up when they're small young and tender. Right. And then if you don't get them when they're small and tender,
then they're a real problem.
And they're not palatable to cattle. So yeah, I think that it's obviously I think it's a very wise avenue, and that's kind of what New Zealand has done, and they implement these models full scale in their whole industry, and so the whole world looks to them, and I think that's why you find probably Wales just goes with them, because they're getting really high quality products.
Well, and they are, in all fairness, they are members of the British Commonwealth of Nations, and so they may be getting some tariff advantages also.
Most likely.
But it's something we ought to be looking into.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, that's, we had our banquet this past Friday, and our guest speaker, Joel Salatin, that's actually one of the reasons why amongst farmers he's absolutely famous, is because he's written a dozen books or more on how to implement this stuff here in our region, in Virginia, how to take all that old tobacco infrastructure and convert it over into this biodiversity, diverse farming style agriculture, and that's exactly one of the reasons why he's famous. And
I'm sorry I missed that. There's always good ideas that you can learn from. Of course, everybody's got some good ideas, and you have to try to mix and match and come up with a balance between the various ideas.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's a great it was a great event. I mean, we were sad to have not had you, but I understand it's a busy season, and it's just understandable. So another thing, if you don't mind me touching on, is back in 2012 when I met you, we were having this discussion, and we were giving the farm tour, and we were talking about what's going on here, and that's about the time we were having that conversation about New Holland, and a bird flew over by, and you just completely were sidetracked, and you knew everything about that bird, and I had just watched a movie. Me and my wife, we sat and watched a movie. It's called The Big Year.
Big Year, sure.
And you completely just went into that mode. And I was fascinated by the fact that we just learned about this bird watching stuff, and then here you are a very avid bird watcher, and that is kind of one of your hobbies. And
it's a hobby. It's very relaxing, and I will tell you, it's also educational, because the reason I was on that farm in Utah, or on that property in Utah, is because I was with folks who had the right to do the nature watching on that property, and was up there with a team of bird watchers seeing, all of the great habitat that had been created by going with this new farming method. But I was actually there to see the birds to begin with, and we saw, just incredible things that you wouldn't expect to see right there with the animals. Badgers, with the farm animals, badgers, burrowing owls, prairie dogs. We saw a coyote go across the property. And of course, a coyote, when you're doing that, as you call it, and I didn't know that was the name of it, the mob grazing, they don't mess with the cows because they're all so close together. You can't pick one off.
Well,
they would be if they started to attack the cows in that enclosed type of an environment, the cattle would eliminate the coyote.
Yeah.
So the coyote was steering clear.
Yeah, well, I know it's very dangerous when we have a calf. We got to tag it real soon because you only have a day or two before you can't catch it. And so we tag it, and if that calf bellers, I mean, the whole herd is on you, and it's kind of intimidating. You got 50 to 70, half a ton animals just getting ready to run over you. So yeah.
It's an interesting hobby, and I enjoy doing it. And
I think
it allows me to relax. And sometimes in my line of work, when it's nice every now and then to get out and take a walk in the woods, and whether I see a bird or not, it's nice to be on the hunt and doing something a little different.
Yeah, well, I know as a farmer, my kind of hobby is grasses. I'm actually a grass farmer. For me, I'm a cattle farmer, but I'm more or less a grass farmer. And so, learning, identifying the grasses, and then, some people that's just like, okay, whatever. But I find it fascinating. I learn all this stuff. And then when you get to a lot of other farmers, they know what all the trees are. And I personally think it's just a knowledge. It's just a experience of knowledge that a lot of people, especially coming from a city environment and stuff like I did, it's just, oh, it's a tree, or oh, it's a bird, or oh, it's some grass. There's no, knowledge involved, and I find it fascinating. So I thought it was really interesting to see.
Well, I'm going to flip the tables on you real quick. And one of the things I found fascinating from our conversation was why you came to this area, and not just because it was a good farming area, but because you noticed that a lot of people down here had faith and prayed. You were out somewhere in the area, not necessarily here in Russell, but in the area, and noticed that people were praying before their meals. And
Absolutely.
That's a story that stuck with me, and I've told it a number of times because it is a part of what makes this area great.
No, well, I'll tell you, up in north, I'm not sure what it is. Faith is different, and there's a lot less of it. And when I was younger, there was a lot of it. Even to the point where on Sunday everything's closed down, and the Amish still maintain that kind of thing, and everybody would wave when they would travel. The sense of community was so great up north 25, 30 years ago, and then it just something happened, it changed, and it went away, and now you're the guy waving, and everybody's just not even noticing. And then as soon as I moved down here, that was the first thing. I was the bad guy not waving at anybody, so it was a really incredible change, and I find that that's exactly what it is. It's just that the faith is strong down here, and the Christian values are just intact still, and it's an honor for me to raise my children in this region. So I agree. I think that's a wonderful thing. I still do, and I look forward to being and staying here forever. I'm a Virginian. You guys are stuck with me now. So.
Hey, we're glad to have you.
Yeah. So to kind of get into the format of our program here, it's campaign season.
Yeah.
And we got you running. How you feeling? How's everything going on the ground? Anything you like to share with us about that?
Well, I think it's going very well. I'm just talking to folks about how I've been working hard. I'm not going to get them all right. Anybody that thinks that anybody who goes into public office is going to get every issue correct is mistaken. But I'm in there working. I try to stay up on the issues. I'm reading a lot, studying a lot, trying to pay attention to what's going on. It's not a 9-to-5 job. And so, I'm having to tell my kids sometimes, all right, be quiet, I got to listen to this. This is something Daddy's got to work on when somebody's on TV talking about an issue. A number of them out there today, from ISIS to Ebola. So I've been talking to folks about what I'm trying to do, and then listening to constituents for issues that they raise and thoughts that they have about things that we can do. Obviously there's a lot of frustration about what's happening in Washington. Understandable. I'm frustrated too.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll be able to make some changes in the next few weeks, and that maybe we can put some bills on the president's desk. You know, we have over 370 bills sitting on Harry Reid's desk
Yeah. And
that haven't been acted on. And
Some
good
really,
ones.
really good ones too. I mean,
And there's got to be compromise. And
Yeah.
Anybody who tells you, no, you don't compromise, you got to have some compromise in order to make things work. But what Harry Reid's doing is he won't even let them be discussed.
yeah,
And that's a real problem in the Senate, because I know sometimes, in fact, I had a bill in the last session, not this session, on Boiler Act rules dealing with boilers for industry, boilers for schools, boilers for hospitals that burn coal and wood and some other products. And a part of that was to give businesses and schools more time to meet the EPA regulations. Now, I wanted to roll back the EPA regulations too, because I think the EPA's got them wrong. But the compromise, even if you were in favor of the regulations, the compromise was to lengthen out the time because the EPA can't meet the timeline. Well, that bill never came up for discussion. There was never an opportunity for me to look at my Senate colleagues in a conference or in a discussion, because Harry Reid wouldn't bring it up, and say, hey, you know what, guys, all right, you don't like this part, but what's wrong with this part? Because I had an EPA official in testifying, and I said, you've got projects that are more than 5 years old, don't you? And the lady said, yes. And I said, then how come you don't support an extension of time for businesses when they can't complete a project in 4 years? The law only gives them 4 years. Regulation goes into effect, you get 3 years automatic, you can get a 1 year extension. My bill said it was 5 years plus an extension that the EPA administrator would agree to, whatever that extension was, that gave them an open door. I said, why won't you at least agree to the 5 years? And she said, well, that's a policy decision. I'm not here on policy. I'm just here telling you where the projects stand. The EPA can't meet their own regs. That's a problem.
Yeah.
The compromise was there. I would have liked the whole loaf, but I would have gladly taken a half a loaf or a third of a loaf. But Harry Reid won't allow any discussion to take place, and that is jamming up the American process. That people don't always understand what the problem is. And there are problems in the House, don't get me wrong. But the number one problem is the modern filibuster rule, and the fact that Harry Reid uses that to force 60 people to vote against him. And that's very tough for Democrat senators to do. Some of them aren't willing to get into a fight anyway. But Harry Reid's blocking everything. And we have to have change in the Senate, quite frankly.
yeah. Well, speaking of that change, we got Ed Gillespie coming
Yep.
up, and it's only 3 weeks away.
It is.
And then right now it's Ed Gillespie and you on our ballot, and I've seen you around. You're with Ed Gillespie a lot. I mean, what do you got? Anything interesting you want to tell everybody about it? I mean,
Well, I think the bottom line is that, Ed has conservative values. He understands that we have to be able to fight the EPA, that we have to be able to use our coal. That doesn't mean we can't work on clean coal technology. That doesn't mean we can't push. But Ed understands this simple fact. The EPA's most recent proposals require that by 2020, we have a plan and we are implementing that plan and we're, going away from coal. But the DOE, the Department of Energy, tells us that the technology available to make coal burn cleanly won't be available until 2025. And so, on the one hand, they're saying you have to change, and we're not saying we're against coal, but you have to do it before the technology can possibly be available to the open market. That's a problem. Ed understands that. Ed understands that we need to have jobs. Ed understands that we need to fight to make sure that we put our conservative values from Southwest Virginia on the desk of the president. Now, I can't tell you he won't veto, but right now he doesn't have to veto, because Harry Reid and the filibuster rule is vetoing everything, jamming everything up, and that's wrong. And if we want to change Washington, we have to change the United States Senate.
That's right.
No matter how nice a guy Mark Warner may be, and he is a great guy, don't get me wrong, he's a nice fellow. But no matter how nice he is, he's voting for the wrong policies. He's had 3 opportunities to vote for Harry Reid. He's voted for him every time to be the leader of the Senate. Every time he's had that opportunity, he's done so. He has voted with the president 97% of the time. And maybe if he was fighting Harry Reid, he'd get a chance to show that he was a little bit independent from the president. But he is not independent of the president. He's not independent of Harry Reid. He hides behind them in order to say, well, we never really got a vote on that. Well, why didn't you get a vote on that? It's because you, Mark Warner, weren't willing to force the issue with Harry Reid and President Obama. So unfortunately, as nice a guy as he is, and I would do anything to help him in a outside of the political realm that I could, but he votes wrong. He votes wrong in Washington, and that's what our elections are about. Who's going to vote right? Who's going to change Washington? That person this year is Ed Gillespie.
Yeah, and I know this is you know, if you go on Ed's website, edforsenate.com, you can see he's got a really clear plan. He's the most vocal person about the issues. He's got something to offer in way of solutions. And,
he proposed a plan, and I think it's a good plan. I'm not sure it's where we need to end up, but it's a starting point plan. It's a discussion on Obamacare. What do we do after Obamacare? Because there are a lot of people who say, "Oh, you just got to live with the bill passed." One, Congress has never done that. They're always changing things. But more importantly, this plan is collapsing under its own weight. It's costing more than they thought it would. It's hurting our medical care facilities, and particularly in the rural areas. You can't keep your plan, you can't keep your doctor as they promised it could, and it's not saving us money. The whole thing is collapsing. Whether the Democrats like it or not, there's going to have to be a replacement to Obamacare, and Ed has put a plan out there. Like I said, it may not be the end plan, but it's a discussion point plan. We're not hearing anything from Warner except basically, well, this is what we got. I want to change it a little bit. No.
Yeah.
The foundation is ruined. The walls have termites. The plan is collapsing. Admit it. Let's bulldoze it and start over.
Yeah, well, that's with Ed Gillespie. That's how we'll do that. So I think that, you know, we got elections 3 weeks away. Like I said, edforsenate.com. You can go learn all about his ideas on how we can fix these things. And, you know, also Moran Griffith for Congress.
Moran Griffith for Congress.
Yeah, .com. You know, what's good taking the Senate if we don't keep the House?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, and the other thing is Todd Pillion running for 4th District Delegate seat. But you got to remember, this election is not November 4th. It is a special election. It will be on December 9th. And you also have to do your diligence and get out if you also want to maintain the Republican control in our state legislature. So Morgan, I thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor having you.
It's always good to see you.
Yes, everybody, Moran Griffith, Congressman Moran Griffith, and I'm Dwayne McIntyre with the Russell County Republican Party, and this is Campaign Corner.